Our story starts in a regular classroom, but the atmosphere is pure humiliation. Money is thrown straight into Sushun's face while people mock him for being poor. The message is obvious. He's a nobody, and he should stay far away from Ansi Jing. The hierarchy in that room is absolute. Everyone keeps their distance, as if poverty were contagious, reinforcing the idea that he and Ansi belong to completely different worlds. Things escalate when Wang Teng, the vice dean's son, decides to join in. In his eyes, Sushun doesn't even have the right to look at someone like Ansi. The room fills with laughter until everything suddenly stops. The doors burst open. Mr. Lee, a powerful executive from the multinational Law King Jun, walks in with his security team. The entire class freezes. Nobody understands why someone this important would show up for a broke student. Then comes the moment that flips everything. Mr. Lee and his entire escort bow to Sushun. Out loud, they beg him to return and take control of the corporation. Wang Teng's brain basically short-circuits. He quickly argues that Shun is just a mediocre student, but Mr. Lee cuts him off immediately. He reveals the truth no one in that room was ready to hear. Sushun isn't a nobody. He's the sole heir to the entire empire. Fear washes over Wang Teng as his world collapses. Sushun doesn't waste time explaining anything. He simply walks over and delivers a sharp slap across Wang Teng's face, shutting him up instantly. Then Shun turns to the stunned Ansi Jing. Without hesitation, he pulls her by the waist and kisses her right in front of everyone. The room falls into absolute silence. Her face burns red with embarrassment and anger, but the power dynamic has completely shifted. Without another word, Sushun turns around and orders his escort to follow him, leaving behind nothing but shocked faces and a storm of whispers. Just 20 minutes earlier, things were completely different. Back then, Shun was just a college student worrying about a notification. The company president, Cao Chengming, had been in a serious accident. On top of that, he still had to deal with petty classroom bullying, like when Sillin threw a crumpled piece of paper at his head to get attention. At that moment, he was the easiest target in the room. Now, he's the one running the game. Memories start replaying in Shun's mind. He had noticed Ansi's interest before, but his empty bank account always stopped him from doing anything about it. Romance without money was a luxury he simply couldn't afford. But now the game has changed. The system has awakened. A notification appears. Activation successful. Shun now has the ability to change identities every week, gaining random abilities every time he completes a task. The first command appears. Switch identity. In an instant, the ordinary college student disappears. In his place stands the new president of Yun International. He now carries the bloodline of the sole heir, along with powerful bonuses, sharp business instincts, natural leadership, and unshakable composure. But the power comes with a deadline. He has 7 days to uncover the suspicious death of the former president and fully reclaim control of the empire. The noise of students leaving class suddenly pulls Shun back to reality. He's soaked in sweat, trying to figure out if all of this is real or just some kind of hallucination. Then Ansi Jing storms up to him, furious about being ignored. Shun tries to come up with an excuse, but Wang Teng's venomous voice cuts through the air, threatening him to never get close to her again. While tensions rise back at school, the scene shifts to luxury. Sushun now sits in a VIP seat, casually sipping an expensive wine, testing the weight of his new life. He's curious to see just how far this ride will go. Elsewhere, the vice director receives news that Mr. Lee has returned, but he doesn't seem worried at all. In his mind, that little kid is harmless, and he already has the company under control. What he doesn't know is that Mr. Lee is already introducing Sushun directly to Vice President Chen Jua, setting up the checkmate. Everything changed after the tragic death of Mr. Chow. Even with the chaos surrounding the succession, the will was clear. Every share now belongs to Sushun. He already knows his relationship with the vice president will be a battlefield, but his strategy is simple. Establish dominance and double the company's growth under his leadership. Mr. Lee warns him that Chen Jua is dangerous. People who cross him tend to disappear without a trace. Instead of backing down, Shun finds the situation exciting. Danger is exactly the spice he was missing. Knowing the board of directors is waiting in the lobby, he makes a bold move to test everyone's patience. He orders the meeting to happen at the main entrance, and, just to completely break protocol, he stops on the way to buy a milk tea. Meanwhile, tension explodes in the reception area. The board members are furious. They've been waiting for half a day. To them, it's unacceptable that some unknown kid with no resume is about to take the throne that should belong to Mr. Cheng. Arguments erupt between the old guard and those with new interest in the company. Then the car finally arrives. Sushun steps out calmly, holding his cup of milk tea like he's on a casual Sunday stroll. Chenjua approaches with a fake smile and extends his hand, trying to keep his superior attitude. He jokes about the delay and suggests that Shun shouldn't be interfering in adult business. Shun barely listens. To him, Chenjua looks like nothing more than a loud barking dog. Before the man can finish his sentence, slap. Su Shun smashes his hand across Chenjua's face. The silence afterward is deafening. Without even looking back, leaving his enemy humiliated in front of everyone, Shun walks straight into the conference room. There, Mr. Lee introduces his new ally, Secretary Liu Yu, ready to begin the real power game. Wasting no time, Su Shun takes control and orders the secretary to prepare 3 cups of tea. The room that once mocked him now feels the weight of his presence. He sits down calmly, almost relaxed, satisfied that all his targets are gathered in one place. An interruption comes quickly. One of the board members tries to question the inheritance. A cup of tea flies straight at him. Shun's reflex is instant, just like his authority. Mr. Lee watches in shock as the young man calmly finishes his sentence without being disrespected again. He is the new president, and he wants to hear what they have to say. The silence that follows is absolute. No one dares to give the first answer. Shun's aggressive charisma impresses even the most skeptical people in the room. Sensing that the kid is actually willing to listen, Chenjua lets out a cynical chuckle and throws out the bait. If Shun really wants to prove himself and silence the company's doubts, he should close an impossible deal, a partnership with Taishan Corporation, the group's biggest rival. Mr. Lee instantly explodes in anger at the obvious trap. Chenjua responds by throwing a glass of water straight at him, but the glass never hits. With perfect timing, Su Shun catches it mid-air before it reaches his ally. The entire room freezes. Instead of backing down, Shun raises the stakes. Chenjua offers him 1 month to secure a contract with Taishan, but the new president, with the confidence of someone who has already won, cuts the deadline down to 1 week. The meeting ends under the weight of that seemingly suicidal promise. Determined, Shun turns to the receptionist to give his next orders while the board members whisper among themselves, trying to figure out if he's a genius or completely insane. The laughter starts the moment the conference room door closes. Chenjua celebrates what he believes is an early checkmate, while the flattering board members already declare victory. To them, Su Shun is just an arrogant kid digging his own grave, and Mr. Lee is a fool for backing him. The old vice president barely hides his contempt. He still refuses to accept that the late president, Cao Chengming, left the entire empire to someone he considers an idiot. In his mind, Shun's failure is inevitable, and when it happens, he plans to step in and claim power himself. But inside the car, the mood couldn't be more different. Ignoring the mockery, Su Shun quietly studies the reports. Mr. Lee tries to convince him to abandon the suicidal bet, but Shun interrupts him with a direct question about the former president's death. The official police report says it was a traffic accident, but the system wouldn't create a mission based on coincidence. Shun studies the details. A garbage truck crushed the president's car at an intersection. The driver followed that same route every day, the perfect alibi for a carefully planned crime. Without wasting time, Shun gives a clear order. Mr. Lee needs to go to the police station and keep a close eye on the truck driver. That man is the key to everything. While Mr. Lee leaves for the task, the secretary hands Shun a file on the president of their rival company, Taishan Corporation. The name Anantian sounds strangely familiar. When he opens the file, the shock hits instantly. The photos in the news articles reveal a face he knows very well. It's Ansi Jing, the same girl from his classroom, a coincidence explosive enough to connect both worlds. Far away from all that, Ansi Jing steps out of the shower, still trying to process the rumors spreading around campus. How did the poor scholarship student she used to humiliate suddenly become the owner of a multinational corporation? Before she can think it through, her phone starts vibrating. Nervous, she makes up an excuse to her friends and rushes outside. Under the lonely light of a street lamp, a shadow approaches. Suddenly, someone grabs her from behind. Startled, her heart jumps, thinking it's a stranger. She reacts purely on instinct, grabbing the attacker's arm and throwing him straight to the ground. Only then does she hear the voice. Between laughter and short breaths, the man on the pavement tries to explain who he is and who's really in charge now. Reality hits Ansi Jing all at once when she realizes the attacker on the ground is actually Su Shun. Embarrassed apologies follow, both of them blushing, while Shun struggles to believe how strong the girl really is after she pinned him down so easily. The tense atmosphere from school slowly fades into a quiet walk through the night. The teasing starts almost immediately. Shun reminds her about the kiss she didn't exactly reject earlier, which makes her face burn with embarrassment. The mask of the poor student is completely gone now. Shun makes it clear that he finally has the means to give her the life she deserves. The tears in her eyes confirm what years of indifference had been hiding. But even in the middle of this romantic moment, Shun makes a strategic move. He casually asks about her father, the owner of Taishan Corporation. At first, she gets annoyed, accusing him of forgetting something she told him 5 years ago. But soon she understands what he's doing. If Shun wants to dominate Qinjun, Taishan's support is the missing pillar. Their moment is suddenly interrupted by a phone call. The truck driver, the only witness to President Cao's accident, has just committed suicide. It's the first sign that someone is already cleaning up loose ends. Shun quickly says goodbye and rushes off, but the danger doesn't wait for him to reach his destination. As he crosses the street, the headlights of a speeding car suddenly lock onto him. The impact seems unavoidable. Then another car appears out of nowhere, swerving directly into the attacker's path in a desperate maneuver. The assassin's car speeds away, disappearing into the night. Shun stands there frozen, realizing how close he just came to dying. From the rescue vehicle, a panicked Mr. Lee jumps out. He acted at the last possible second to protect his new boss. Meanwhile, inside a dark luxury office, the atmosphere is strangely celebratory. Chenjua calmly finishes his drink. The driver's mistake wasn't a failure, it was a message. He didn't want 2 dead presidents in one night. Not yet. Back in Shun's office, Mr. Lee pieces everything together and explodes with rage. The warning has been delivered. The battle for power is no longer just business. It's now officially a matter of life and death. Shun's delay almost cost him his life, but the truth that follows is even darker. Inside the police station, the truck driver supposedly took his own life in isolation. A letter was left behind, claiming he couldn't handle the debt caused by the accident. Mr. Lee accepts the official explanation. Shun doesn't. To him, the story is obviously fake. A man with no family wouldn't kill himself over debt. If he really chose death, it was to secure someone else's future, someone hiding in the shadows. Shun gives a new order. Dig through the driver's entire past until they find the trail of money. While the investigation heats up, family drama explodes inside the An family mansion. Lixiu is screaming at her husband Nantian, furious that he can't control their daughter. The reason? Ansi Jing spent the entire night out chasing some poor nobody, while the perfect heir, Xiao Cheng, waited for her until dawn. The atmosphere is humiliating for the wealthy suitor, who is clearly losing patience with the family's lack of discipline. Then the front door opens, and everyone freezes. Ansi Jing walks in smiling, with Su Shun right beside her. The silence in the room is broken by Shun's bold introduction. He calmly announces himself as her official boyfriend, and even offers a bag of fruit as a polite gift. Her brother John Jun instantly explodes in rage. He kicks the bag across the floor, sending apples rolling everywhere, unable to accept that a nobody would dare step into their home. But Shun doesn't move. With a sarcastic smile, he compliments the family's excellent manners while the fruit rolls across the room. Jianjun tries to charge at him but is stopped by his father's shout. Nantian studies the boy with a mixture of anger and strange curiosity, because one thing is obvious. Su Shun doesn't have the fear in his eyes that a poor man should have. The game inside the Taishan mansion has officially begun, and the chess pieces are about to start flying. Su Shun was about to reveal the truth, but Xiao Chen's arrogance cuts through the moment. The heir of Kangshan Steel puffs out his chest and proudly boasts that he'll soon control everything. Then, in a predictable move, he tosses a bank card onto the floor. Inside, it is $1 million. His offer is simple. Take the money and disappear from Ansi Jing's life forever. The tension exploded when a slap cracked across Xiao Chen's face. Ansi stepped in immediately, exposing the rich heir's hypocrisy. The same guy who preached humility had no problem using his wealth and status to humiliate others. Xiao Chen laughed it off, mocking Shun's supposed insignificance. Shun calmly bent down and picked up the bank card from the floor, but not out of greed. He slipped it into his pocket and made a sharp comment about how someone shouldn't waste their parents' money in such a pathetic way. Ansi's parents watched the scene unfold, torn between amusement and curiosity. When Xiao Chen demanded that the family choose a son-in-law based purely on status, Shun finally dropped the bomb. He was the new president of Qinjun International. The laughter died in Xiao Chen's throat as the realization slowly hit. The entire room froze. Even Ansi's father, normally unshakable, looked stunned. Xiao Chen tried to keep his composure, calling Shun a fraud, but fate had other plans. On the TV in the background, a news broadcast suddenly announced the death of the former president and the reading of his will. Then the screen filled with the image of Su Shun, the 19-year-old heir who had just inherited the entire empire. The silence in the room became deafening. Xiao Chen's defeat was complete. Sensing the shift in power, Nantian instantly changed his tone, already thinking about a future partnership with the new tycoon. While the former suitor stood there sweating in fear, Shun casually mentioned that he had urgent matters to handle. Without another explanation, he walked across the room and slammed the door behind him, leaving the stunned family and his humiliated rival behind. Back inside the Taishan mansion, the attitude toward Shun changed in seconds. Jianjun, who had just kicked the fruit bag earlier, suddenly tried to hug him like an old friend. Lixiu grabbed his arm, insisting that he sit down and join them at the table. Their interest in his new status was painfully obvious, but Nantian suddenly killed the mood. Despite Shun's position, he declared that he would never do business with Qinjun and demanded that Shun leave immediately. Ansi Jing couldn't understand her father's sudden hostility. Shun, however, remained completely calm. He had already done his homework. Before coming here, he had someone investigate the reason behind the long-standing feud between Nantian and the late Mr. Chow. As Nantian nervously tried to keep his composure, Shun began reading out loud some very uncomfortable details he had uncovered, including stories about Nantian's youth alongside Mr. Chow. Panic instantly flashed across Nantian's face. Desperate to silence him before his wife heard any more secrets, he quickly changed his tone. Grabbing Shun by the arm, he dragged him into his office and begged him to sign a cooperation agreement immediately. As the documents were laid out on the desk, Shun delivered the final blow. He casually asked if Nantian's decades-long rivalry with Mr. Chow had really started because of a woman. The fear in Nantian's eyes confirmed everything. He would sign anything to keep that secret buried. 2 days later, the news of the partnership hit Qinjun's board like a bomb. Chenjua shattered his porcelain teacup in rage when he heard that the little kid had managed to bend Nantian, something no one had been able to do for years. His secretary suggested that Shun's connection with Ansi Jing might have been the key, but blinded by hatred, Chenjua refused to accept the loss. Instead, he began planning a far dirtier move to bring the young heir down. Meanwhile, the system delivered another warning. Only 4 days remained. Lying in bed, Su Shun closed his eyes, knowing the final stage of the game was about to begin. The mood in the office the next day was heavy. Shun sat there quietly, frustrated that the pieces of the puzzle still didn't fully connect, until Mr. Lee burst into the room with a shocking discovery. The truck driver involved in the accident had a secret. He had a daughter studying at an expensive school, something he could never possibly afford. Shun understood immediately. The crime hadn't been random. It had been financed and planned years in advance. Realizing they were dealing with professionals, Mr. Lee wasted no time hiring elite protection. The door opened, and several men walked in wearing casual clothes, but their posture and presence made it obvious. These were former Special Forces soldiers. Impressed, Shun accepted the protection, but his attention quickly shifted to a photograph. The man in the picture was named Lu Jun, Chen Jua's personal attack dog. The name sounded familiar to Shun, and suddenly a connection with his secretary started making sense. At that very moment, somewhere in the company's hallway, Lu Jun had Liu Yu pinned against the wall. He reminded her who gave her that job in the first place. Under pressure and threats, the secretary begged for mercy, revealing that her father's fate depended on her cooperation in this dangerous plan. Completely unaware of the drama unfolding outside, Su Shun stretched in his chair, exhausted. When he stepped out of the office, his 5 new bodyguards shouted in perfect unison, bowing respectfully. All Shun wanted was to go home, but the intense professionalism of the escort caught him off guard. At the far end of the room, Liu Yu sat frozen at her computer, pretending to work while the pressure closed in around her. Shun passed her desk and casually said he was leaving, but the secretary quickly stopped him. Her car had broken down, she explained, and she needed a ride home. Without hesitation, Shun agreed. The elite bodyguards opened the car door with military precision, and the drive continued until they reached her apartment building. When they arrived, instead of leaving, Shun made another move. He asked if he could come upstairs for a glass of water. Liu Yu rushed ahead nervously, while the bodyguards outside exchanged knowing looks, convinced their boss would be spending the night there. Inside, the apartment was a complete mess. Piles of dirty clothes covered the place, clear signs of exhaustion and stress. Shun sat down on the couch surrounded by the chaos while Liu Yu, her face burning with embarrassment, rushed around cleaning everything as fast as she could. But in the kitchen, the mood was far darker. Liu Yu held a small pill Lu Jun had given her. The plan was simple. Drug Su Shun, take compromising photos, and destroy his reputation. With no way out, she dropped the pill into the glass of water. Meanwhile, in the living room, Shun studied the photo frames on the wall. Calmly, he asked about her family. He was testing the waters. When Liu Yu handed him the glass, she almost gave everything away when Shun suddenly asked what her relationship with Lu Jun was. She quickly lied, claiming they just had the same name. Shun smiled as if he believed her. Under her terrified gaze, he drank the entire glass in one go. When he stood up to leave, panic hit her. The drug hadn't kicked in yet. Desperate, she shouted and made up a complicated question just to keep him there longer. Shun calmly returned to the couch, pretending he was about to answer while the clock kept ticking. Outside, the bodyguards were casually smoking until one of them received a short message from the president. "Turn off your phones." The trap was closing. Inside the apartment, things began to change. The internet signal that had covered the entire place suddenly went dead. On Shun's order, his men outside were cutting every connection. He had given them 5 minutes to make the digital blackout complete. At the same time, the medicine started taking effect. But it wasn't the sleep Liu Yu had expected. The drug was actually a powerful aphrodisiac. Shun understood the setup immediately. Seeing Liu Yu's condition and noticing a faint red light glowing from a wall socket, he realized they were both targets. On the other side of that hidden camera, Lu Jun and his men were watching everything unfold, waiting for the scandal they planned to capture. The tension in the room rose fast. Liu Yu's vision blurred, and the intensity of the drug even caused her nose to start bleeding. But the villain's entertainment ended early. With the bodyguards blocking the signal, the transmission suddenly cut off at the worst possible moment, leaving Lu Jun furious in the dark. In her dazed state, Liu Yu barely understood when Shun suddenly pushed her onto the bed and called her a fool for letting herself be used as bait. Then he rushed out of the room, burning with heat, demanding ice to fight the chemical effect spreading through his body. One of the bodyguards quickly entered the apartment to secure the president. He found the secretary barely conscious on the couch, while Shun tried to recover under freezing water in the shower. When Shun stepped out, soaked and breathing heavily, he ignored the guard's sarcastic comments and gave a direct order. "Find the hidden camera immediately." Liu Yu panicked and tried to defend herself, claiming she only knew about the pills. Shun didn't care about excuses. While getting dressed, he ordered her to search the entire room until she found the device that almost destroyed both their reputations. He had already figured out the truth. Sleeping pills wouldn't create a real scandal. The plan was to drug them with something strong enough to force an intimate situation and ruin him publicly. The realization hit Liu Yu hard. Moments later, the bodyguard pulled the first hidden camera straight out of the power socket. Shun ordered a full sweep of the apartment. He was sure the place had been turned into a surveillance nest. As the men searched the rooms, Liu Yu completely broke down. She was stunned when she realized Shun already knew about her connection to Lu Jun, the man who had been using her like a disposable pawn. Through tears, she confessed everything. 15 years earlier, her father had abandoned her and her sick mother to live with another woman. They reunited 3 years ago, when he suddenly reappeared with a job opportunity for her at the company. She had believed she owed her life to him. Now the evidence in front of her showed the truth. It had all been a trap. The bodyguard soon found 3 more hidden cameras, one in the bedroom and another carefully hidden in the bathroom. Shun tossed the devices in his hand, forcing her to face the cruelty of Lu Jun's plan. The bodyguard was furious at the villain's audacity, but Shun was already thinking several moves ahead. He intended to take down Chen Jua, but first, he needed both father and daughter to play on his side. As he prepared to leave, he left the secretary alone with her tears and bitter memories. Liu Yu sat there holding the cameras, remembering the day she first came to the city, desperate for work. She had been rejected and humiliated everywhere until her father suddenly appeared with what seemed like salvation. Now she understood that help had come with a price. Outside, rain pounded the pavement as Liu Yu collapsed to her knees, completely broken. Through her tears, she only wanted her mother's comfort. But years earlier, when her father had appeared behind her like a last hope, she chose to trust him again. She believed he was the only family she had left. She had no idea it was all a cruel lie. From outside a door nearby, the sound of laughter and clinking glasses revealed the truth. Lu Jun was bragging to his drunk friends about how he had manipulated his own daughter for years. Between drinks, he proudly admitted that he had secretly arranged for companies to reject her job applications so he could later appear as the hero offering her a position. His friends praised him for the dirty strategy of using his own daughter as a spy. Outside, Liu Yu heard everything. The betrayal shattered her. Meanwhile, inside the luxury car, one of Shun's bodyguards couldn't hide his concern. Why keep a secretary who had betrayed him? He understood that betraying a boss was easier than betraying a father, but it still felt dangerous to keep someone connected to Chen Jua so close. Shun remained completely calm. For him, loyalty wasn't about feelings. It was about results. Hearing that, the bodyguard reaffirmed the absolute loyalty of his elite team. Watching Shun through the rearview mirror, he couldn't help being impressed. Despite his young age, the president handled financial crises and enemy attacks without even showing stress. He seemed almost unshakable. On his phone, Shun calmly watched videos from online streamers, already anticipating that the content about to leak would soon become his rival's worst nightmare. When he finally arrived home, exhaustion hit him. Shun yawned as he remembered the system's countdown. Only 2 days remained to complete the mission, but he felt no panic. This coldness, this ability to deal with chaos, felt like a gift from his new identity, and he was ready for the final checkmate. His rest didn't last long. A desperate knock came at the door. Liu Yu stood there, breathless, begging for just a few minutes. Once inside, the words poured out like a flood. Her anger toward her father burned inside her. For the first time, she clearly saw how he had used her like a disposable tool all these years. With tears streaming down her face, she offered to help destroy Lu Jun. She was willing to do anything for revenge. Shun stayed calm. Placing a hand on her shoulder, he told her he would help her escape the nightmare, but only if she played on his side. The next morning, Lu Jun's mask began to crack. He showed up at his daughter's apartment ready to collect the hidden cameras and the evidence of the scandal. Instead, he found Liu Yu waiting for him. The shock was immediate. When she confronted him about the secret surveillance and betrayal, Lu Jun chose the most cowardly defense possible. He blamed everything on Director Chen, claiming he had acted behind his back. While pretending to be a loving father and promising she would become a company director once the job was done, Liu Yu simply stared at him. She could see right through the emptiness of his lies. Liu Yu pretended she didn't know anything and suggested they talk in private. They went upstairs, and Lu Jun, impatient, kept asking questions about the night with Su Shun and whether the compromising photos were secured. Inside the apartment, he even had the nerve to introduce his own wife, who had never met Liu Yu, as if his daughter were just a co-worker. The moment they stepped into his office, Liu Yu's patience ran out. Following Shun's plan, she knew she had to access her father's computer. Lu Jun noticed the memory cards were still in her hands and tried to grab them, but the game suddenly changed. With a cold stare, she stopped him and set the price for her loyalty, 8 million yuan. That was the cost to hand over what he wanted. The blackmail had turned against the master. Lu Jun burned with rage when he realized his own daughter was auctioning the recordings, even hinting that Su Shun would pay much more for them. But he had no choice. If the scandal plan against the president failed, everything would collapse. Still, Lu Jun had no intention of paying out of his own pocket. He asked for 10 minutes and left the room to beg Director Chen for the money. That was his fatal mistake. The second he turned his back, Liu Yu acted with surgical precision. She plugged Su Shun's flash drive into her father's laptop, infecting the system with an undetectable Trojan. On the other end, Shun was monitoring everything. He promised her a fortune if she could extract the data he needed. When the bodyguards overheard the amounts being discussed, they were stunned by how high the stakes had become. Liu Yu was sweating, but she managed to crack the hidden folder before her father returned. When Lu Jun walked back in, proud after speaking with Chen, he found his daughter pacing around the office, pretending to be frustrated because she couldn't find any photos of her mother in the room. She kept the pressure on, demanding payment first. Cornered, Lu Jun transferred the millions. Liu Yu's smile confirmed the betrayal. She refused to show the video there, claiming she didn't want to watch something like that with her father present. Lu Jun didn't suspect a thing. He believed he now had the material he needed to turn Ansi Jing against Su Shun. What he didn't know was that the video was already in far more dangerous hands. Meanwhile, at the company headquarters, Chen Zhua watched as Ansi Jing parked her car outside with a predatory look in his eyes. He immediately called an emergency board meeting. In his office, Su Shun received the summons. He stood up calmly, knowing this would be the final battle for the Empire. Back at the apartment, Liu Yu collapsed to the floor, pretending to faint so her father, in panic, would reveal the location of other evidence he was still hiding. Just then, Lu Jun's phone rang. Director Chen was furious. He had just learned that the memory cards were already in Ansi Jing's hands. Panic spread even further when Ansi's brother, Jian Yang, stormed into Qin Yun Company's headquarters. He staged a dramatic scene, loudly accusing Su Shun of betraying his sister and dishonoring their alliance with Taishan. Ansi Jing joined the act, pretending to cry while her brother demanded answers. Chen Zhua watched everything like a spectator enjoying the show, convinced the young president's reputation was about to collapse. Shun remained completely calm. He suggested they speak privately, but Chen Zhua had other plans. Instead, he opened the doors and allowed a crowd of journalists and reporters inside under the excuse of transparency and justice. Surrounded by flashing cameras, Su Shun seemed trapped, but Chen Zhua's trap was about to explode in his own hands. Ansi Jing wiped her tears and opened the laptop, claiming she would show the final proof of Shun's betrayal. Chen Zhua smiled, expecting the compromising photos to appear on the screen, but what played instead froze the entire room. The video didn't show an affair. It showed hidden camera footage of Lu Jun and his accomplices discussing the plan to murder former President Cao. Cold sweat rolled down Chen Zhua's face as the reporters realized this wasn't a romance scandal. It was evidence of premeditated murder. Chaos erupted instantly. Chen Zhua tried to order security to remove the press, but Su Shun's elite bodyguards stepped in, protecting the journalists and making sure the truth was broadcast live. Amid flashing cameras and shouting reporters, Shun walked up to his trapped rival with a cold smile. Then he calmly asked him to comment on the murder evidence in front of the entire country. Chen Zhua's entire scheme collapsed. Cornered by the footage, he made one last desperate move and tried to blame everything on his attack dog, Lu Jun. But betrayal ran both ways. Lu Jun had his own recordings prepared as insurance. Mr. Li soon arrived with the police. Under the flashing cameras of the press, both villains were led away in handcuffs. Su Shun's plan had worked perfectly. The system immediately confirmed the mission's success. The deadline had ended. A new week had begun, and with it came a new identity, the Lord, the most feared and efficient assassin in the world. Absolute stealth, master-level disguise skills, and lethal combat ability now ran through Shun's veins. His new objective was simple: tie up loose ends and survive the criminal underworld. Later, in the office, Mr. Li reported that the video would guarantee life sentences for the criminals. But Shun wasn't satisfied with slow justice. With a cold look that even unsettled his most loyal ally, he demanded the death penalty for both men and ordered the necessary arrangements to be made. Mr. Li left the room stunned. The young president had become something far more dangerous than just a businessman. To test his new reflexes, Shun picked up a pen. With a movement so fast it was almost invisible, he flicked it toward the wall. The pen pierced the concrete like a nail, punching straight through a stack of papers along the way. Shun smiled. He could feel the power of his new class. The final test of the day came from one of his elite bodyguards. Curious about the change in his boss's aura, the guard accepted Shun's challenge and attacked with full force. The huge man lunged forward with a heavy punch, but Su Shun didn't move. He simply watched the strike approach, almost in slow motion. Ready to prove that now, he was the predator at the top of the food chain. The punch came fast and heavy, packed with power, but Su Shun reacted on pure instinct. With a movement so subtle it was almost invisible, he delivered a light kick to the bodyguard's shoulder. The result was immediate. The big man stumbled back, screaming in pain, while Shun watched with clear annoyance, irritated by the exaggerated reaction as the man acted like his arm had been broken. Looking for a real challenge to test his new assassin abilities, Shun headed to an underground fight club. Hidden under a hood in the crowd, he watched the fighters in the ring with boredom, quietly muttering that he could beat them without effort. A nearby trainer overheard the comment and got furious, challenging him to prove it inside the ring. Shun accepted immediately, excited by the opportunity. The tension rose when the man, doubting the young man's slim appearance, swore he would shut down the club if Shun actually won. At that same moment, Xiao Cheng walked into the building to check on his investments. To his surprise, he found Su Shun preparing to fight. Seeing the perfect chance for revenge, Xiao Cheng bet 1 million on Shun's defeat, certain he would be destroyed. Shun's opponent was no ordinary fighter. Known in the underground as the Savage Monster, the foreign fighter had a brutal record in illegal arenas and was motivated by the promise of a huge payout. As the giant slammed his gloves together with murderous intent, Xiao Cheng watched from the side with a cruel smile, convinced Su Shun wouldn't last 10 seconds. The bell rang. The Savage Monster moved with complete confidence, believing 10 seconds would be enough to end Shun's life. His first punch came down like thunder, but Shun slipped away with insulting ease. Confused, the giant blamed the floor or a misstep while his trainer shouted angrily from the corner, unable to believe a normal-looking kid had reflexes like that. Bored with the slow pace, Shun decided to speed things up and challenge the monster to use his full strength. Insulted, the fighter unleashed his killing intent, turning into the beast no opponent had ever survived. Xiao Cheng watched with a cruel grin, waiting to see Shun's bones crushed for daring to steal his woman. The giant unleashed a storm of punches, but Shun calmly dodged every single one, even making jokes about the man's terrible aim. Humiliated, the monster demanded that Shun stop running and actually hit him. Shun granted the request immediately, When their fists collided, a sharp crack echoed through the club. The giant's arm bent in a horrifying zigzag, his bones shattering like glass. Silence filled the room for a moment before the fighter's screams of agony broke it. He collapsed on the floor, bleeding, as the crowd backed away in horror. Xiao Cheng spit out his drink in shock, realizing the real monster in the room wasn't the one he expected. He tried to leave the building before being noticed, but his phone rang in his pocket. It was Su Shun, calling from the ring while staring directly at him. Panic flooded Xiao Cheng as Shun stepped down from the ring and began walking toward him. His bodyguards tried to block the path, but they were knocked out instantly with precise blows to the head before they could even react. Shun grabbed Xiao Cheng by the neck, revealing he knew exactly who had sent the assassin. Sweating and stammering, Xiao Cheng struggled to speak. Shun gave him a final warning. This was his last chance. The next bone to break would be his neck. Without another word, Shun walked away, leaving behind fear and destruction. Rumors spread like wildfire after he left the club. Everyone was talking about the mysterious stranger who took down the savage monster and 2 elite bodyguards without breaking a sweat. Xiao Cheng burned with humiliation as people mocked him for being nothing more than a spoiled rich kid. Trying to save face, he called Ansi Jing and invited her to lunch, but she rejected him immediately. She told him to focus on studying and revealed she was already planning to donate $3 million to the university to secure the semester. Meanwhile, danger was watching from above. On top of a skyscraper, 2 professional snipers monitored Su Shun. One of them couldn't believe the legendary assassin could be someone so young, but she was still ready to pull the trigger. Then something impossible happened. From far below, Shun suddenly turned his head and looked straight at them. Panic hit instantly. The sniper couldn't understand how anyone could detect them from that distance. In the blink of an eye, Shun disappeared from their sight. Sensing danger in the air, Su Shun returned to his building. He knew Xiao Cheng couldn't have hired professionals of that level so quickly. These enemies belonged to the past of his new identity. To welcome them, he turned his residence into a fortress. Armored vehicles surrounded the building, 30 elite guards secured the area, and infrared sensors covered every angle. By nightfall, the snipers watched the house and felt disappointed. For someone known as the Lord, the defenses looked primitive. Inside, Shun calmly flipped through a magazine. He knew the obvious security was just bait to make his enemies feel confident and lower their guard. The silence broke when his phone rang. Unknown number. When he answered, the voice on the other side spoke directly using his codename. It was Tony, the official agent of the Supreme Lord, bringing the next step of the game. Shun was completely surprised when Tony used his personal number to offer an easy job. Even though he was retired, the payment of $3.5 million caught his attention. Tony tried to make it sound simple, saying the target was just the president of a major corporation in China and that he would send the file by email. The shock came when Shun opened the document. The target profile on the screen was his own. He nearly spit out his water in disbelief at the audacity of someone placing a bounty on his head. Meanwhile, on a sunny beach, Tony relaxed under an umbrella until he received a threatening phone call. Under pressure and fear, the agent finally revealed the truth. The client behind the contract was Han Xiao Cheng, the spoiled heir who had just unknowingly signed his own death sentence. Before Shun could even start planning a counterattack, the door burst open. Ansi Jing stormed into the apartment, furious because he had disappeared and forgotten the thank you dinner he had promised her. Without giving him time to explain, she grabbed his arm and dragged him out, reminding him that getting a table at that luxury restaurant was nearly impossible and that he owed her for being late. As they left the house, the unusual movement of security guards around the property didn't escape Ansi's notice. Shun simply gave a subtle signal to his elite bodyguard, ordering a few men to follow them from a distance. Their convoy headed down the road toward the restaurant, while predators waited in the shadows for the right moment to strike, unaware their target already knew every move they made. On the way, Ansi sensed the tension in the air and assumed Shun had noticed something dangerous and was waiting for backup. When they realized they would miss their reservation, she got even more irritated. Shun solved the problem in the most absurd way possible. With a single phone call, he bought the entire Grant Hotel and casually invited her to have lunch there the next day, leaving her speechless. With the mood already ruined, they ended up going to her house instead. Her brother was overseas and her parents were out at a meeting, leaving the place empty. While Ansi was cooking some pasta, Shun walked up behind her and wrapped his arms around her waist. When she tried to scold him, he silenced her with a deep kiss. Things heated up quickly. The moment didn't last long. The sound of a light switch snapping on shattered everything. The lights came on, revealing Ansi's parents standing there. They had returned early after their meeting was canceled. They had caught everything. Her father stared in disbelief, his daughter red with embarrassment, and Shun in a position that was impossible to explain. The excuse that they had accidentally fallen onto the couch didn't work, especially since he clearly saw Shun trying to zip up his pants. Shun was kicked out of the mansion immediately. He walked back to the car under the amused looks of his bodyguards, who didn't miss the chance to joke about their boss's short performance. Annoyed, Shun got behind the wheel and slammed the gas pedal. His anger wasn't just about getting caught. The assassins hired by Xiao Cheng still hadn't shown up, even after he had made himself vulnerable. Needing to release his frustration, he drove straight into enemy territory. When he arrived at the entrance, a guard tried to stop him. Shun wasn't interested in talking. With a cold stare, he demanded to know if Han Xiao Cheng was inside. The final confrontation was about to begin. The reception wasn't friendly. The guard tried to shove him back, but Shun moved first. One clean punch dropped the man to the ground, blood spilling from his mouth. The second guard pulled out a gun, but Shun reacted on pure instinct. He jammed the weapon's mechanism with his hand and knocked the man out with a precise strike to the neck before he could even understand what had happened. Inside, Xiao Cheng was entertaining company and hated the interruption. When he stormed to the door shouting for his men, he froze the moment he saw who was standing there. The girls inside ran away in panic. Trying to recover, Xiao Cheng changed his tone and even offered luxury escorts as an apology for what had happened at the fight club. Shun didn't even blink. He wasn't there to negotiate. Things escalated quickly when reinforcements arrived at the gate. Dozens of armed thugs surrounded Shun, laughing at the idea that he had shown up alone. Xiao Cheng regained his confidence and ordered them to beat him until that calm smile disappeared. One thug rushed forward with a machete. A single punch shattered his jaw. What followed was a one-sided massacre. Shun moved through the attackers like a ghost, dropping them one after another with brutal precision. Within seconds, Xiao Cheng's entire crew was lying on the ground. In the end, Shun lifted the last thug by the neck and slammed him against the wall, only letting him go when he realized Xiao Cheng had no more cards to play. Cornered and defenseless, Xiao Cheng tried one last desperate move. He challenged Shun to kill him. Then he delivered a quiet threat. Shun couldn't protect Ansi Jing 24 hours a day. Sooner or later, she would be kidnapped. That was the trigger. Su Shun exploded with rage, knocking Xiao Cheng to the ground with a brutal strike. The spoiled heir curled up on the floor, begging for mercy through tears and sobs. With his foot pressed against Xiao Cheng's chest, Shun warned him that if he ever touched Ansi, he would turn his life into hell. Xiao Cheng, still believing he was dealing with nothing more than a lucky businessman, tried to act brave, but his face went pale when Shun mentioned the $3.5 million contract placed on his own head. The shock was immediate. Only the client and the legendary assassin known as the Lord should have known about that. When Shun leaned close and quietly confirmed that he was the very man behind that title, pure terror took over Xiao Cheng. Then the windows exploded. Gunshots shattered the glass, and Shun jumped aside with superhuman reflexes. On the floor, Xiao Cheng screamed in panic while desperately trying to call the police with shaking hands. Shun grabbed him by the hair and forced him to look at the bullets tearing through the room. Those shooters weren't Xiao Cheng's men. They were professionals hunting the Lord. After spotting them on the rooftop of a nearby building, Shun decided the game would end right there. The sniper was watching the only exit through his scope, waiting for the target to run outside. Instead, he suddenly felt a sharp impact in his shoulder. Thinking it was debris, he tried to pull it out and froze in shock. It was a toothpick. Su Shun had thrown it with the force of a rifle shot. The distance should have made that impossible. But for an elite assassin like Shun, impossible didn't matter. In pure desperation, the sniper pulled the pin from a grenade with his teeth and hurled it towards Shun, still unable to understand how a tiny wooden toothpick had nearly pierced his armor from hundreds of meters away. Smoke from the grenade filled the rooftop, and the sniper used the chaos to make a desperate escape. He slid down the ropes, hoping the distance would be enough to get away from a monster like Su Shun. Wounded and gasping for air, he had barely touched the ground when a brutal kick slammed him into a wall. Shun wasn't there for a fair fight. He was playing with his prey. The man tried to fight back, pulling out his gun and firing wildly, but Shun had already vanished into the shadows of the alley. In a superhuman move, the Lord dropped from above and crushed his opponent with a blow that made him spit blood. Lifting the man by the neck near the edge of the building, Shun calmly gave him 10 seconds to reveal who had hired him. The sniper pretended to give in, but tried one last trick by pulling a knife from his belt. Before the blade could even move through the air, Shun simply let go. The man's body fell into the darkness below, but fate had other plans. A black SUV sped past at that exact moment, breaking his fall. Seconds later, a convoy of identical vehicles screeched to a stop, and men in suits jumped out, opening fire toward the rooftop. Shun didn't even bother shooting back. He turned his back on the storm of bullets and disappeared into the night. On the ground, a mysterious woman took command of the group, furious that they had just lost the most valuable target in the world. The injured sniper, bones shattered, warned them that the Lord was an untouchable demon. With the police already on the way, the criminals retreated quickly, while their leader worried about only one thing: how she would explain this complete failure to the real boss. The convoy sped away, unaware that danger was traveling with them. Su Shun was clinging beneath one of the vehicles. He had just infiltrated the serpent's nest. When they arrived at a large mansion, tension filled the air. The boss slammed his fist on the table in anger over the failed mission. The wounded assassin begged for one last chance, promising he would bring back the target's head. The leader gave him 3 days before leaving on his ship, ordering that the next attempt must succeed. Their strategy quickly changed. Now the order was to use Shun's girlfriend as bait. Hidden in the bushes outside, Su Shun heard everything. He recognized the man leading the operation, Callan Wilson, someone who had carried hatred for 7 years after losing a fortune and a few fingers to the previous Lord. To Shun, Callan was nothing more than an irrelevant ghost chasing an impossible revenge. Meanwhile, Ansi Jing was relaxing in bed when she received a late-night call. Shun unexpectedly invited her on a luxury cruise, and her eyes immediately lit up with excitement. The next morning, already settled in a 5-star hotel suite, she ran across the balcony, amazed by the view from the top floor and recording everything on her phone. Shun, seeing nothing special in the scenery, simply pulled her close and promised to take her anywhere in the world. After a quick kiss, Ansi started planning a day at the beach, but Shun was more focused on food. While she showered behind the glass bathroom wall, nearly making him lose his breath, he ordered a full banquet from room service. Between bites, he called to check on the company. Liu Yu confirmed that enemy agents were still wasting their time watching the empty office, completely unaware that their target was miles away enjoying life. The distraction plan was working perfectly. While assassins watched a decoy at the office in Arapongas, the real Su Shun was already far away, preparing his next move. Later, at the hotel restaurant, an unexpected guest tried to steal the spotlight. A woman named Janjuruo, whose beauty turned heads across the room, asked to share their table, claiming there were no seats available. Men everywhere stared at her in awe, even one guy who nearly got slapped by his girlfriend for not looking away. Shun acted like she didn't exist. Janjuruo, used to being the center of attention, assumed he was playing hard to get or simply too shy to look at her. The real shock came when Shun finished his meal and stood up without saying a word, leaving the fatal beauty sitting there alone. The only thing on his mind was whether there was a stain on his shirt, since the strange woman kept staring at him. Later, while walking along the harbor, the atmosphere turned even more extravagant. A crowd gathered along the windows to watch the arrival of the Golden Ray, one of the most expensive cruise ships in the world. The ship's golden shine reflected in Ansi Jing's eyes as she dreamed about boarding it. Shun smiled slightly. He knew that Callan Wilson's prized toy had finally come within his reach. The check-in area was chaotic, with excited passengers trying to take pictures near the massive ship. Ansi froze in amazement when Shun pulled her closer and suggested they go on board. For her, it felt like an impossible dream. For him, it was the start of an infiltration. Before stepping onto the deck, Shun quietly changed his appearance. The Lord had no intention of being recognized too early. Ansi could hardly believe they were about to board the ship. Tickets for the Golden Ray were usually sold out a year in advance. As they walked toward the boarding ramp, Su Shun accidentally bumped into an arrogant man. The man reacted angrily, but Shun simply smiled. In the blink of an eye, 2 VIP tickets appeared in Shun's hands. Ansi's eyes widened when she realized he had just stolen them. Shun quickly reassured her that the victim wasn't innocent. It was a gambler involved in money laundering. Satisfied with that explanation, she pulled him onto the ship, excited to begin the trip. Inside, the atmosphere felt strange. Shun quickly noticed the passengers looked far from ordinary. This wasn't a normal cruise. It was a private gathering for criminals and powerful figures from the underworld. He knew Wilson had to be somewhere nearby, and the confrontation was inevitable. Meanwhile, inside a luxurious suite, Callan Wilson angrily splashed wine across a subordinate's face, furious that the head of the Lord had not been delivered yet. The trembling man insisted the final ambush was already prepared for when the target returned home. Impatient, Wilson stood up with his cane. It was time to begin the main event in the grand hall. The main hall was packed. Ansi felt a chill run down her spine when she heard rumors that the place hosted a massive underground casino. She immediately wanted to leave, but Shun gently held her arm and assured her she was safe. In the corridor, he spotted Janjuruo again, the girl from the restaurant, standing alone and quietly observing everything with an unreadable expression. Suddenly, the lights shifted toward the stage. Callan Wilson stepped out to thunderous applause and cheers, welcoming his honored guests. Hidden in the crowd under his new disguise, Su-shun gave a cold smile. He knew Wilson was celebrating the last days of his life, and that the Golden Ray would become the stage for his downfall. Tension on the cruise ship grew stronger as the vessel approached international waters. While Ansi Jing looked curiously at the gambling tables, Su-shun explained that the low-stakes games were only a cover meant to stall for time. Wilson was a cautious target. He only appeared briefly and unpredictably, making it nearly impossible to locate him inside the luxurious maze of the ship. Across the hall, Janjuruo jumped excitedly every time she won at the table next to them. To Shun, she looked like nothing more than a wealthy heiress enjoying the thrill of gambling. But her unbelievable streak of luck soon began attracting dangerous attention. From his monitoring room, Wilson watched her through the security cameras. Ignoring the passenger list entirely, he made a simple decision. Any woman on his ship now belonged to him. The approach was blunt. Two men in suits interrupted her game with an invitation to have coffee with the boss. Janjuruo tried to refuse with a mocking tone, but the cold touch of a blade pressed against her thigh quickly changed the conversation. Even after attempting to use her social status as protection, she was dragged through the corridors under the watchful but silent eyes of Su-shun. Meanwhile, Wilson became uneasy about another figure on the surveillance screens. A young man wearing a hat seemed to be mocking the entire security system. No camera could clearly capture his face. It was as if he knew exactly where every blind spot was located. The security officer monitoring the footage began to sweat, realizing it wasn't luck, it was pure professionalism. Wilson felt danger creeping closer. The target he had hunted for so long was not only on the ship, but seemed to have an invisible guardian protecting his every move. Janjuru's cry for help echoed through the corridor, but on the Golden Ray, screams rarely led to rescue. Wilson's game was about to turn into a nightmare. While he dragged Janjuru toward his private suite, the girl sobbed and desperately offered money in exchange for her freedom. Su-shun watched everything from the shadows, calculating the perfect moment to act. Before he could move, a steel cable suddenly whipped toward him. A bodyguard attempted a cheap strike aimed at his pelvis, but Shun only smiled. With a quick motion, he grabbed the cable from the attacker's hands and knocked him down with humiliating ease. The guard lay on the floor, stunned and confused about how a simple security guard could move with such terrifying skill. By the time reinforcements arrived, Shun had already disappeared around the corner. When they found their fallen teammate, panic began spreading across the ship. A predator was loose on the Golden Ray. Inside Wilson's room, Janjuruo slowly backed toward the wall, trembling in fear. The old man approached with twisted promises of kindness, laughing at the girl's desperation. In a sudden act of resistance, she knocked over a vase. The crash of shattered glass brought the guards rushing to the door, but Wilson, irritated, ordered them to stay outside. He wanted to savor every second of her fear. What he didn't expect was the arrival of the Lord. Outside, Su-shun was already climbing the side of the ship like a phantom. Without hesitation, he smashed through the glass window and entered the luxurious suite like a demon. The shock froze Wilson for a brief second before he screamed for help. Too late. Shun's fist crashed into his face with full force. Blood exploded from Wilson's mouth, instantly wiping the villain's smile away. Outside the room, the sudden silence from the guards was the first sign of chaos. Inside, Callan Wilson was already sprawled across the floor, spitting out a tooth after the brutal punch. Janjuruo, still shaking, tried to see the face of her rescuer through the shadows. When Shun removed his glasses and revealed his face, she finally recognized the shy guy from the restaurant. Overcome with relief and gratitude, she threw herself into his arms, crying uncontrollably. The calm lasted only seconds. A voice suddenly echoed through the ship's speaker system. If Shun didn't surrender, Ansi Jing would be tortured. Outside on the deck, the situation had already turned critical. Ansi was surrounded by armed agents, being used as bait. When the elevator doors opened, the mercenaries aimed their weapons, ready to kill, but froze when they saw Wilson being held in front of Shun as a human shield. Shun carefully studied every movement. The game had changed. The leader of the agents, Johan, pressed the barrel of his gun against Ansi's temple, ignoring Wilson's desperate order to cease fire. It became painfully clear that loyalty on this ship had a price. The mercenaries openly admitted that Wilson's death would actually benefit them more. If he died, they would split his fortune among themselves. Wilson screamed in rage as he realized the men he had paid for years had betrayed him. Johann only smiled. Then he fired his boss with a bullet to the head. Gunfire erupted instantly afterward. Ansi Jing ran for cover behind a wall, screaming Shun's name while bullets tore through the corridor like a meat grinder. But Shun moved like a ghost. He quickly realized something important. The system still hadn't announced the completion of the mission. The real challenge had only just begun. Cornered and surrounded, Shun slowly pulled the knife from his belt, his eyes turning ice cold. Johann gave the final order. Every mercenary rushed forward at once to ensure the Lord would never leave the Golden Ray alive. Darkness became Sushun's greatest ally. The moment the attack began, he burst from the shadows and unleashed a storm of daggers that pierced the mercenaries' chests with surgical precision. One of the agents tried to retaliate with a machine gun. Shun instantly grabbed the body of a wounded officer and used him as a human shield while advancing forward without hesitation. Johann and Ansi Jing watched the scene in shock. Amid the chaos, Shun destroyed the hall's lanterns, plunging everything into complete darkness. Panic exploded instantly. George tried to regroup the men by shouting orders, but his voice became his death sentence. Guided by the sound, Shun appeared behind him and pressed a blade against his throat. The other agents, desperate and confused, ignored George's screams and opened fire at his position. Their frantic burst of gunfire killed their own teammate. One of the female mercenaries tried to avenge him, firing point blank at Shun, but he dodged every bullet with a mocking smile. With a quick motion, he slit her throat. For a brief moment, he almost sounded regretful, remarking that such beauty was wasted, since in his eyes no one could ever surpass Ansi Jing. Johann, cornered and terrified, tried to use Ansi as his final shield. But before he could finish his threat, a dagger flew through the air and knocked the gun from his hand. Johann's fear turned into pure horror when he realized Shun was already standing behind him. A cold whisper reached his ear. This was why he carried the title of Supreme Lord. To spare Ansi from the bloody scene, Shun gently covered her eyes with one hand. With the other, he swung his blade once. Johann's head fell in a single clean strike. Silence slowly returned to the deck. With the job finished, Shun finally let out a calm breath. The system confirmed the mission's success and immediately prompted a class transition. Without hesitation, he accepted his new identity for the week. Su Shun had now become an infallible seer, someone capable of seeing the future before it even happened. The new week began with a mystical twist. Now a seer, Su Shun possessed the ability to communicate with spirits and predict the future with absolute precision. The system gave him a clear objective. He had 7 days to become a living legend across the entire province. In return, a mysterious reward awaited him. While Shun tried to process the rules of this new game, Ansi Jing interrupted his thoughts. She asked why he was still covering her eyes. He slowly removed his hand, explaining that he didn't want her to see the bloodbath on the deck. With the calmness of someone who had just wiped out an army, Shun assured her that those men were nothing but trash, and that the danger was over. At the port, police sirens and flashing lights surrounded the cruise ship. Authorities had received an anonymous report about the illegal casino operating on board, and elite passengers were now being escorted out in panic. Shun introduced himself to the officers as the president of the Shinjun Corporation, revealing that he was the one who had reported Wilson's criminal empire. From a distance, Janjiruo watched the scene with mixed feelings of admiration and disappointment. She tried to thank him, but Shun cut her off coldly. He said he had only saved her by coincidence, and that traveling alone to a place like that had been extremely reckless. Without giving her another glance, he left with Ansi and returned to the hotel. Back in the room, the atmosphere shifted. Ansi, still shaken by the night's events, admitted she was afraid to sleep alone and needed someone by her side. Shun, completely focused on his new mission as a seer and missing her intention entirely, calmly suggested standing guard outside the door instead. The hint flew right past him. Ansi was left furious at his complete lack of awareness. The next morning, she woke up and found Shun sitting at the foot of the bed, waiting patiently for half an hour so they wouldn't miss their flight home. Her face turned red, confused about why he had been quietly watching her sleep for so long. The romantic mood of the morning didn't last long. With a mysterious smile, Su Shun made a teasing remark suggesting that the previous night hadn't been enough, promising to be more affectionate next time. Ansi blushed even deeper, unsure what he meant. Soon after, the scene changed completely. They arrived at the university, and after a goodbye kiss and a promise to meet again that night, Shun stepped into his new role. On the steps of the campus, the image of the corporate president vanished. In its place appeared a street fortune teller. Dressed the part, Shun set up his stall beside a veteran fortune teller who had been in the business for 30 years. The old master snorted in anger, convinced that the young newcomer was nothing more than a fraud who didn't even know how to properly trick people. Offended by Shun's claim that he possessed a real supernatural gift, the old man packed his things and stormed away. It didn't take long for the first customer to appear. A young couple walked down the steps while arguing about going to the movies. The girl immediately stopped when she noticed Shun's striking appearance. Ignoring her boyfriend's warnings about scammers, she eagerly extended her hand, curious to test the stranger's powers. The situation quickly grew tense. Her boyfriend, overflowing with jealousy and skepticism, grabbed her arm and challenged Shun directly. He threatened to break him if the prediction didn't come true. The old fortune teller, watching from afar, laughed at the trouble the rookie had gotten himself into. But Shun didn't back down. With absolute calm, he accepted the challenge and asked if the tough guy was really ready to face the consequences of the truth. The girl tried to avoid the conflict, but curiosity got the better of her. Laughing at Shun's supposed arrogance, the man demanded to know exactly what fate had in store for him in the next few minutes. The challenge had been set. To end the argument, Su Shun spoke plainly. He predicted that the man would bleed and be humiliated before the day was over. The guy burst out laughing. Mocking the prophecy, he bragged about being a black belt in Taekwondo and promised to return the next day to expose the lie. Sensing trouble, his girlfriend tried to pull him away. Fate didn't even take 5 minutes. While dragging the girl toward the cinema in anger, the hot-headed man accidentally bumped into a stranger on the street. Before he could react with his usual arrogance, he suddenly found himself surrounded. Liu and his gang appeared like shadows, trapping the couple. The so-called black belt didn't stand a chance. The beating was fast and precise. Not long after, the scene at the fortune-telling stall changed completely. The same man returned with a swollen face, his pride completely shattered. He dropped to his knees in front of Su Shun. Between sobs and desperate apologies, he begged for guidance, finally recognizing the genius standing before him. Shun remained composed. Before helping him, he demanded that the man admit his bad behavior first. Nearby, the old fortune teller watched in stunned silence. Shun explained that he never read the future of the same person twice, but he made an exception for the girl. Curious and still blushing, Huang Jing, a second-year education student, asked about her financial future. After briefly analyzing her situation, Shun gave a clear answer. Good news about money would arrive any second now. The injured boyfriend's skepticism was suddenly interrupted by the sound of his phone ringing. It was the university director. He confirmed that Huang Jing had just been approved for a scholarship. Excitement exploded around the stall. Overwhelmed with joy, the girl grabbed Shun's hand and looked at him as if he were some all-powerful being. Within seconds, a crowd formed around the fortune-telling table, everyone desperate to hear a single word from the city's new seer. Shun simply watched the chaos with an unreadable expression. To maintain the aura of mystery, Su Shun quickly established a strict rule. He would only see 2 people per day. Then he quietly left the scene under the hungry stares of the crowd, fully aware that public curiosity would do all the marketing for him. Back at the office, a new notification from the system changed the rules of the game. Now, whenever he touched an object, he could access its memories, even its soul. He decided to test it immediately. The first subject was a decorative plant. The moment his palm touched one of its leaves, a flood of visions dragged him into its perspective. He saw the daily life of the office through the plant's existence, every quiet moment, even the times when Liu silently watered it. The experience was overwhelming. When Shun pulled his hand away, he was sweating cold. The potential of the ability was frightening. He realized he could uncover the hidden secrets of anyone. That thought alone was dangerous. Before temptation could sink in, his phone vibrated again. It was a message from Auntie Jing. She invited him to lunch with an uncle who had just returned from overseas. What sounded like a casual meal quickly turned into an official introduction to the family. At the table, the mood was cheerful. The relatives praised Auntie for maturing and congratulated her on finding such a handsome boyfriend. They even asked Shun to take good care of her. The peace didn't last long. Auntie's cousin, Unjuyu, and her boyfriend Liua soon joined the conversation. Trying to show off, Liua suggested they exchange contacts so he could help grow Shun's business, speaking with a condescending tone that immediately rubbed everyone the wrong way. When asked what he did for a living, Shun answered humbly that he ran a small business. Liua smirked. Running a hand through his hair with obvious arrogance, he bragged about working for the powerful Qinyun International Corporation and offered to help the poor guy. He had absolutely no idea he was offering a job to the owner of the very company where he worked. The family lunch took an even stranger turn when Su Shun accepted Lua's handshake. The moment their palms touched, the memory-reading ability activated, and the visions were ugly. Shun saw Lua's dark past unfold in seconds. The man had staged a fake, heroic rescue of a girl just to gain her parents' trust. Behind the scenes, he hid embarrassing medical secrets and shady dealings with men in expensive suits. The images made Shun feel sick. What disturbed him even more was discovering Lua's twisted fantasies, ones that involved not only his own fiancée, Anjuyu, but also Ansi Jing. Shun decided the man deserved a public humiliation. Pretending he had forgotten his phone, he casually asked to borrow Lua's device. Overflowing with arrogance, Lua handed it over without hesitation and even proudly recited the password. That was his fatal mistake. With a few quick movements, Shun accessed the hidden folders on the phone. Seconds later, the giant screen in the room displayed Lua's very unconventional hobbies with other men. The shock was instant. Ansi turned her face away in embarrassment, while Anjuyu's parents burned with rage after seeing the true face of their future son-in-law. Lua stood frozen, unable to understand how Shun had cracked the encryption protecting his most private secrets. Humiliated and exposed, Lua completely lost control. With a furious roar, he grabbed the heavy dining table with both hands and hurled it toward Ansi and her mother. Shun moved instantly. With a devastating reflex, he kicked the table mid-air. The wood shattered in half. The broken pieces flew back toward Lua, smashing into him and knocking the fraud unconscious in front of the horrified family. His entire lie collapsed in blood and shame. Pinned against the wall after Shun's counterattack, Lua trembled as his secrets continued pouring out. His staged rescue of Anjuyu, the medical records he tried to hide, everything. Yu snapped. Realizing she had been nothing more than a pawn in his schemes, she grabbed a knife and chased him out of the house in tears and screams. When the chaos finally settled, the room was filled with uneasy questions. Ansi's father, although relieved to be rid of such a terrible future son-in-law, couldn't understand how Shun knew such intimate details about someone who had just arrived from overseas. Shun tried to explain. He told them he was a visionary. The confession earned him a piece of paper thrown at the back of his head. Ansi wasn't in the mood for mystical nonsense. She ordered him to stop talking nonsense and finish his food. Later, when Shun left the house, he sensed something strange. Someone was following him. He quietly turned the corner, only to find Anjuyu standing there, pale and nervous. Gone was the arrogance she had shown earlier. Now she was desperate. She begged for his help. She needed the services of a seer to cleanse her new home from an evil presence that had been haunting her. By late afternoon, they arrived at the isolated cabin where her family had recently settled after returning to the country. Yu looked terrified. Since the second night in the house, strange noises and mournful crying near the windows had kept her awake. She described the moment when she tried to close the curtains to block the wind, and the fabric suddenly shaped itself into the silhouette of a person standing behind it, as if something invisible were waiting to be invited inside. Her fear was real. Every time she noticed the shape, it vanished instantly. Determined to solve the mystery, she brought Su Shun to the bedroom and pointed at the heavy curtains. Shun approached cautiously. When he touched the fabric, he activated his medium ability. The world changed instantly. Floating lights, like spiritual embers, filled the room, forming a trail that led directly toward the dense forest behind the cabin. Even for someone like Shun, the clarity of the supernatural trace sent a cold sweat down his face. Outside, Yu locked herself inside the car and called her mother for comfort, but she trusted that the seer would handle the situation. Shun stepped into the yard. The air around him suddenly turned freezing cold. A violent shiver ran down his spine when he realized something horrifying. The silhouette wasn't in front of him anymore. It was behind him. He spun around instantly, holding a spiritual talisman and ready to strike. But he froze the moment he heard a scream. Not supernatural. A scream filled with pure human terror. It wasn't a monster. It was the spirit of a young girl. The shock made Shun lose his balance and fall backward, immediately realizing a major flaw in his new power. He could see a soul, but he couldn't physically touch it. At least, that's what he thought. The ghost girl, surprised that someone could actually see her, approached him with curiosity. Instead of trying to possess him, she simply reached out and held his hand. The moment their hands touched, something impossible happened. Her spirit became solid. From the safety of the car nearby, Yu watched the scene unfold. From her perspective, Shun looked like he was fighting thin air, waving his arms at nothing. Terrified, she quickly reversed the car and sped away, silently apologizing to her cousin in her mind. Left alone with the spirit, Shun grabbed the girl by the back of the neck, surprised to feel the real texture of her spiritual form. He wasn't letting her go. not until she explained why she had been haunting the family and what pain was keeping her bound to that cabin. The spirit finally spoke. Her name was Chinchu. Her death had not been an accident. She had fallen from a cliff. She explained that she wandered around the cabin simply because she had nowhere else to go, and because she believed no one could ever see her. Moved by her story, Sushun made her an offer. He would take her with him. He promised her a place to stay, and more importantly, the chance to settle the score with the person who pushed her into the abyss. Chinchu broke down in tears as the memories of the betrayal came rushing back. When they arrived at her new temporary shelter, Shun laid down a simple rule: no floating around the streets and scaring the neighbors. Still, the adjustment turned out to be unusual. In the middle of the night, Shun suddenly woke up. The ghost was clinging tightly to his arm. Even though she was dead, Chinchu confessed she was terrified of sleeping alone in unfamiliar places. Not knowing how to deal with that level of spiritual clinginess, Shun eventually gave up. Soon enough, the haunting spirit was snoring heavily while sleeping on his chest. The next morning, the hunt began. Following the directions Chinchu gave him, they arrived at a wealthy neighborhood. The truth hit like a punch to the stomach. The murderer was Chinchu's best friend. The reason was painfully trivial. They had both fallen for the same man. Chinchu had never been able to take revenge because the traitor wore a powerful amulet, a mystical charm that blocked any spiritual approach. Standing in front of the woman's enormous mansion, Shun pressed the doorbell with a cold smile. Chinchu, still unsure how they would bypass the amulet's protection, asked what his plan was. Shun simply told her to trust him. As a seer, and now the partner of a spirit, he had a plan that would turn that woman's life into a nightmare. The entrance was pure chaos. Without asking permission, Sushun ignored the housekeeper's protests and walked straight into the mansion as if he owned the place. The owner of the house stormed down the stairs in fury, grabbing a chair and threatening to call the police to throw the intruder out. Shun didn't even blink. He knew fear would be his greatest weapon. To prove he wasn't just some random trespasser, he got a little invisible help. Chinchu made a bottle float across the room all by itself. It stopped right in front of the couple. Their jaws dropped. Terrified by the clear display of a poltergeist, their bravado vanished instantly. They sat down on the couch, stammering apologies and begging to know what was happening. Shun cast the bait. He claimed the house had been marked by a blood spirit and that the family would be destroyed by a deadly curse within 3 days. Panic spread immediately. The man dropped to his knees, willing to offer any fortune just to survive. When Shun asked who else lived in the house, the father desperately called for his daughter. "Xiao Xiao!" The girl came down the stairs complaining about a severe headache, a clear sign of the spiritual presence surrounding her. When she saw her parents kneeling on the floor, she froze. At the top of the stairs, Chinchu instantly recognized the face of the traitor. Memories of the day at the cliff came crashing back like a hammer. Consumed by rage and ignoring the amulet that blocked her, the victim's spirit rushed forward, ready to turn her best friend's life into a nightmare. The tension in the room reached its limit. Blinded by hatred, Chinchu lunged forward to strangle Xiao Xiao, but the amulet around the killer's neck reacted instantly. A mystical barrier flared with light, violently repelling the ghost and tearing her spiritual clothes apart. Sushun watched the invisible clash unfold and felt the energy recoil through the air. Blood suddenly ran from his nose. The sight sent Xiao Xiao's parents into complete panic. To them, it looked like the master was already locked in a deadly battle against a demon. Shun wiped the blood from his nose and ordered Chinchu to calm down. The ghost girl sobbed in frustration, unable to break through the barrier. To the terrified family, it looked as if Shun was fighting an invisible force. Then he played his final card. He declared that the blood curse haunting the house was entirely Xiao Xiao's fault. Those words reignited Chinchu's vengeful fury. The shock paralyzed Xiao Xiao. The moment she heard Chinchu's name, her entire body began to tremble. Her past crime had finally come back to collect its debt. The family's mask shattered. Desperate to protect his wealth and reputation, the father finally confessed the truth. Years ago, his daughter had pushed her best friend off a cliff. The reason was the oldest tragedy in the book. Both girls loved the same man, but he only had eyes for Chinchu. On that mountain, jealousy turned into murder. Even after being exposed, Xiao Xiao snapped, screaming that she had been the rightful choice and that Chinchu had only been an obstacle. Her father finally lost patience. With a furious slap across her face, he silenced her. To him, remorse didn't matter, only survival did. Watching the rot inside that family, Shun spoke coldly. Instead of wasting time arguing, they should discuss the real question. How exactly were they planning to pay to have that blood cleansed?